it constitutes contempt of the National Assembly to knowingly withhold, misrepresent, or conceal any information relevant to the committee's work. But also, you are advised that in accordance with parliamentary privileges, any statement or testimony provided before this committee shall not be used against you in any court of law, except in cases of perjury. Okay, that is where it is proven that you knowingly and deliberately provided false.
So yesterday, Mr. Kurang, we were discussing for a large part of the day the exercise of tagging and valuation of cattle. And correct me if I'm wrong, but our discussions, from what the committee understands, is that because of a report that certain cattle were being sold, and because the commission feared the loss of those cattle, the commission ordered that the cattle be sold. And I guess that was in a bid to safeguard the value of the cattle, correct?
Yes.
And pursuant to that order, a team from the commission led by yourself proceeded to the different points where livestock existed as it pertains to the assets of the former president, correct?
Sure.
Can you outline for the committee the specific persons from the commission who were present with you for the record once more?
Present in the tagging and evaluation?
Yes, in that exercise of tagging and valuation.
Like I said, there was the livestock marketing board, livestock department, like 2 representatives, I think.
So what I mean, aside from the external players, the personnel from the commission itself who accompanied you, your team.
I went with my orderly. He's Gassama, Corporal Gassama. There was the head of the security. I think he's DSP Chalo, if I get it right. He's Chalo, DSP or something. And I believe he had a few men with him at that moment, maybe about 5 or so. I cannot remember their names exactly. Apart from that, in the this, I don't know, maybe Fatou Drame, I'm not sure if she was there. I can't remember. She works with me in the secretariat.
She was your assistant, right?
Yes, she was one of the assistants.
One of the
because there was Ramatullah Sar, there was Fatou Drame, and Keba Bojang. They are all from the Ministry of Justice. I can't remember. I know Ramatullah was not there. I do remember Fatou in the tractor sales, but I don't know whether she was with me on the valuation on the tagging. Can't exactly recall. Yeah, but these were the people I can recall from the secretariat.
Thank you. Again, in your testimony yesterday, you mentioned that you visited 3 locations: Kanilai, Farato, and Banjulindi. And in Kanilai, there was, from your testimony, a Major Aliu Sow, if I'm not mistaken, who was in charge.
No, I didn't say so.
Aliu.
I didn't say Aliu.
Okay.
I said Major Sanyang.
Major Sanyang.
Yes, if I can remember it well.
I see.
Yeah.
So Major Sanyang was in charge of Kanilai.
Yes, he's a major, and I believe he's Sanyang. He was in charge of the animals, let's say the livestock.
I see.
But I don't think he was the overall commander at that moment, because I remember we met there Wasa, who had nothing, as far as we were there, to do with the livestock. We were dealing with the major, but I know that he had a senior. So I could say maybe the commander responsible for the livestock or for the chattels.
And that was Mr. Sanyang.
Yes.
And Mr. Sanyang, or should I say rather Major Sanyang?
Major, yes.
Do you remember his first name?
No, I don't remember it right now.
What about in Farato? Can we establish who the contact person was, who was in charge of the cattle?
Yes. If I remember well, in Farato, also is it Major Kurang, or there was a military guy. I kind of remember, maybe Major Kurang, but there was. It's possible it's Major Kurang, because the interaction was a bit brief. So, but there was a military guy, and then there were also herdsmen.
So to the best of your knowledge, it is one Major Kurang.
Yeah, I remember meeting Major Kurang in one of the sites. So it could be. But there was a military guy, and then there were some herdsmen.
Could we get a definite answer from you? Would that be a Major Kurang for Farato, or you're not sure?
No, I'm not sure.
But what is clear from the record is that both in Kanilai and Farato, the exercise of tagging and valuation was successfully done.
Exactly.
The issue came with the exercise in Banjulinding.
Yes.
In Banjulinding, who was the officer or person in charge?
I don't remember, because we didn't take any formal documentation of any cattle there. So, as I said, by the time we arrived, the cattle, the sun was already hot and they had been released. So I don't remember meeting or discussing with any particular person. Maybe Ali Jallo may remember, because he's been dealing with all these people for a long, extended period of time. So he could remember.
Okay, to further our recap of yesterday's testimony, you had mentioned that at some point the exercise of tagging and valuation ceased. And this was also pursuant to a communication from the lead counsel that an application ought to have proceeded to the High Court. Is that correct?
Yeah, it stopped when I got a call from the lead counsel to say that we have to stand down all activities, because as stated in the order, the intervention of the High Court could be sought, and that at that moment she had spoken to the Attorney General, and they have come to the conclusion that they need to invoke that clause. That was on the phone.
In that discussion, did the chairperson of the commission come up with regards to that decision of ceasing to tag and value?
At that moment, I did not remember the lead counsel mentioning the chairperson. And like I said yesterday, it was just like New Year's Eve or 2 days before New Year. There was a holiday. There was nobody in the office because I'm usually the first or the last person to leave the office. There was nobody there. And everybody had gone on holiday. So like I said, when the lead counsel told me on the phone, yes, we automatically stand down. I told everybody that everything is coming to a stop until, we hear from the authorities. So basically what happened was a series of emails I showed you yesterday came during that New Year's holiday. And eventually, at a day after New Year's, I think on the first working day after New Year's, after we went to office, because the office didn't open, maybe a few days after New Year, then I saw the emails. I can't say the chairman, what I assume is that the other two councils were, the other two commissioners were in copy of the emails, which is Abiose and Sen. And well, I assume also, we had always had discussions, and Surahata, the chairperson, had always emphasized that the commission makes decisions on a democratic basis, meaning that at any point, if 2 of the 3 agree on any matter, that matter is decided in favor of the 2. That's what I have always got from the chairperson. So the 2 commissioners were in copy of the emails. When we went back on break and I checked my emails, I saw the emails and I saw the order also from the High Court. And I also saw the instruction. And then I submitted the report that we had done, and take it up.
When you speak of the emails, you mean AMK 11?
Yes.
The emails that you submitted yesterday?
Yes.
From AMK 11, it's evident that the Attorney General was copied as part of those emails.
Yes.
He was a recipient of the messages.
Sure.
Was it a normal practice for the Commission to discuss its decisions or its next steps with the Attorney General?
No. I think, yes, 2 days ago, the chairperson told you that the Commission the Commission is completely independent. And, yeah, to some extent, except when we come to other cases, I would agree with that assertion. I am equally surprised of the nature of the communication, because what I would have thought was the lead counsel would have, discussed with the chairperson all the other commissioners. And when they reach an agreement, just like even if it's a verbal application, because yesterday I mentioned here about applications before orders, then the commissioners would have agreed with her that the matter be forwarded to the High Court. And the communication that I would have preferred was, yes, I have spoken to the chairperson, all the commissioners, and we have agreed to forward the matter to the High Court. But nevertheless, I still accepted when she said, I've discussed with the AG and we are forwarding the matter to the High Court.
Just before I move on from this point, your understanding of the organogram of the Commission, did it include the AG?
No. I understand that the commissioners according to the Act or whatever law, the commissioners are appointed by the President, and like the my understanding is that, as the chairperson stated here, that commissioners are independent and appointed by the President and should report to the President at the end of the process. The lead counsel, on the other hand, appointed by the Attorney General, but that does not, from my understanding of the discussions and what has happened, does not mean that on matters relating to the Commission, lead counsel reports to the AG. I think the lead counsel reports to the Commission as far as matters relating to the Commission are concerned.
Thank you. So, just to put it simply, the AG is not part of the organogram of the Commission?
No, as far as I know.
And from the picture you painted yesterday, with words of course, you have the commissioners at the top, and then you have a dual arrow, where you have on the one side the legal and investigative team, and on the other side you have the secretariat. Is that right?
Yeah, because the chairperson had always told me that the commission is a group of, 5 people. The commissioners, the secretariat, and the council. That's what he refers to as the commission. So the secretariat, I report to the chairperson directly, and the council is also, I believe, an advisor and reports to the commission on matters relating to the commission.
Thank you. So, again, just to narrow it down, you do not report to lead counsel in any way?
No.
You do not take direction rather, from lead counsel?
Well, unless maybe when the chairman asks me or the commissioner asks me to do so.
Of course.
Yeah.
In this particular instance, we have established that the commissioners did not ask you to cease from tagging and valuation. We're not going into the propriety of it, just what happened. Is it the commissioners who asked you to stop, or was it lead counsel who asked you to stop? And was that ordinary in your normal course of things?
I think it's the lead counsel that asked me to cease, both on the phone and also on email subsequently. I don't see that as the normal channel of conveying a decision to me as the secretary. But under the circumstances, I accepted because I do not want to be the reason for any jeopardy that may eventually come.
And in fact, just to aid that line of thinking, when you look at the emails, AMK 11, it comes across as lead counsel advising to put sanity in the procedures of tagging and valuation as per the dictates of the court. Wasn't that so?
So again, can you reference the particular?
You have mentioned just right now that
Yeah.
you took the directive from lead counsel.
Yeah.
In very peculiar circumstances.
Yeah.
Because you believed that the circumstances were indeed strange. However, you did not want to be the reason for any anomaly.
Yeah.
And I am suggesting that the email conversation, in fact, would further explain that to say lead counsel was advising you to stop, or rather directing you to stop, to safeguard the sanity of the process or the transparency of the process, because the High Court had ordered for that exercise to be done by the sheriff and Gilmer.
No, I think the logical sequence of your statement is in question, because
Enlighten us.
Yeah. He said because the High Court has authorized the sheriff, and the action of the lead counsel is not because the High Court has authorized the sheriff. In fact, it is the action of the lead counsel that led to the High Court authorizing the sheriff. I don't know if you get what I've said.
So what you're saying is that the commission made an order and that order was disregarded because the commission's order was for the High Court to validate its order as per your testimony yesterday.
No, this clause says the commission may sought leave of the High Court if it deems necessary.
Should we revisit the clause?
Yes.
We could, in the meantime, get the exhibits. In the meantime, Mr. Kurang.
Yes.
The cattle that wandered off from Banjulinding, did you ever get a chance to go back?
Well,
to Banjulinding to do the tagging?
I said here yesterday, that's when we received the instruction from the lead counsel to step down.
So then,
That very day.
so then in your view, sorry, from your perspective then, tagging and valuation was not done
In Banjulinding.
of cattle.
Yeah, it wasn't done by me and my team. I'm not sure if anybody else did it later.
But you can confirm that in Kanilai and in Barato it was done.
Yes, I can confirm that.
A complete tagging and valuation.
Yes.
Thank you. While we get the records for you, we will definitely revisit the interim order.
Sure.
We would also ask that perhaps not on the spot, but once you've retreated back, you can list down all the names of the persons you remember being involved in that process of tagging.
The persons or the persons that worked at the commission?
The persons in general, both that worked at the commission and from other institutions. You had made note of different institutions, but we would like to know the specific persons.
Okay.
Can we, in the meantime, go to page 8 of your additional statement, the statement you took with the investigation team of the committee, which will be AMK 1A.
Page 8. Yes. Page 8, I'm on page 8.
The portion that reads, or that's entitled luxury vehicles.
Yeah.
Please read that paragraph. If you can read it slowly so that the record can capture it and the committee can digest it.
Luxury vehicles. I had earlier written to the Ministry of Finance under the direction of the commissioners, questioning why luxury vehicles were being listed for sale while the commission's investigation was ongoing. I received no formal reply, despite reminders and a physical follow-up visit. I was told by a permanent secretary that the minister's actions were under the direction or advice of Mrs. Bensouda, which I viewed as a conflict of interest. I was present when the commission visited the luxury vehicles at the State House. I did clearly remember a day when Mrs. Bensouda mentioned in the commissioner's office that an Arab businessman was prepared to pay $1 million for a Jammeh Rolls Royce.
Thank you, Mr. Kurang. Would you, before I zero into my concerns, would you like to explain this paragraph and just shed light for the purposes of the committee?
Yeah, there was a time when the commission came across an advertisement in the papers or in the media showing that some luxury vehicles belonging to the ex-president are available for sale. The commission was surprised as by those vehicles that were considered to be under investigation were being put forward for sale by the Ministry of Finance. This was in the papers. So when the commissioners discussed it, they asked me or tasked me to write to the Ministry of Finance to find out why those luxury vehicles were still or were being put forward for sale.
Sorry, Mr. Kurang, we seem to be having technical difficulties today. We'll sort that out and resume.
Yes, so I said the commission came across that order and then wanted to know why the ministry was trying to sell the vehicles. So the commissioners asked me to draft a letter to the ministry and ask for the reason. I mean, in that circumstance, they helped me draft the letter because for their own words, they always want to be sure, right, what should be in a letter. And we sent the letter to the ministry. I can't remember whether it was initially signed by, usually chairman can sign initial letters and I can sign follow-up letters. But I don't remember, but I took the letter to the ministry. I sent it to the ministry. And after a while, there was no reply. The commissioners asked me to write a follow-up letter directed to the Minister of Finance. I wrote a follow-up letter, and still there was no reply. So after a while again, the chairperson instructed me to go.
Just one moment, Mr. Kurang. Let's sort of our technical difficulties. If the IT take it up.
You need cables. Wireless. Okay. Yes, so the chairperson asked me to write the follow-up letter. I wrote the follow-up letter, and when there was no reply, after a while, maybe a week or two, then the chairperson asked me to go to the ministry, personally, to follow up the letters why there is no reply. So that's when I went to the ministry. When I went there, I wanted to see the minister, but they told me the minister had traveled out of town. So I met the permanent secretary, who was one Mr. Lamin Kamara, if I could remember. And I explained to him the purpose of my visit. And he admitted to seeing the letter at that moment. And I asked him, he's still waiting for a reply. And he said that it's only the minister that can respond to that letter, because the instructions about the sale at that time was coming from the minister. So I tried to engage him and ask him as to why the minister would instruct that, or why the ministry will instruct the sale. And he told me, as the permanent secretary, he never instructed anybody to sell any vehicle. And he used an expression in Mandinka, which is just like "Buntalo Mambukuto," to do that. I mean simply that I have not been bitten by a scorpion to sell an asset that is on my head. I have not been stung by a scorpion on my head to sell an asset that is being investigated by the commission. So I took his word.
Before we proceed, can you decode, the literal interpretation sometimes does not do justice to the phrase. Can you decode that phrase for us, your understanding?
Yeah, my understanding of that is when you are stung by a scorpion, you go temporarily mad, crazy. So you can do anything for that few seconds. So much particularly if you are stung on the head, you go crazy. So when people say, I have not been stung by a scorpion on my head, it means I have not gone insane. I am not mad, or I have not gone crazy. So that's what he's saying. He's not crazy to sell something that is under investigation. But he told me that at that moment, any advice that the minister was getting about whether to proceed with the sales of the luxury vehicles or not, the minister was getting the advice from the lead counsel of the commission. Yes, and he emphasized it by telling me, Amadou Ami, Bakilin Fakilin.
So here we have another incident as per your testimony or your account of lead counsel speaking to members of the executive, or rather, if I can put it on the flip side, here we have another instance where officials in the executive are interfering, if I may use the word loosely, with the operations of the commission. Is that your view?
Yes, that is.
And just to be clear, these assets, the vehicles, they were part of the subject matter of the commission, yes?
Yes, the commission visited the vehicles at the State House, watched them, and we took notes. So all vehicles that used to be owned by Jammeh were technically part of the commission's investigations.
And this investigation, of course, I do understand that you were the secretary and not part of the investigations team, but could you comment on whether this investigation to a large extent separated between assets that were state-owned and assets that were personal to the former president?
Yeah, I believe at some point they would have to do that, and they would have to be constantly watching out for that, because we know that not every vehicle that the ex-president used was eventually frozen or taken over by the commission. There were some that were still in use by the government at the time. So I believe the investigators and the council would make distinctions.
And of course, Indeed, the government did own certain vehicles. I mean, Gambia was not a destitute state. We did own at least some vehicles. They didn't all belong to Jammeh, did they?
Sure.
And if at all they belonged to the Gambia, then the ministry would be in line in disposing them as they please, if at all they did.
If at all they did. That means, yeah, same as the planes.
Do you agree?
I agree that, you know, government departments may have powers to dispose, but I also know that the reason why the commission visited the State House to look at those vehicles and be informed about them has a reason.
And that is where I'm getting to.
Yes.
Did the commission, and especially you as the record of the commission, did you understand those vehicles to be as part of the scope of the commission, as part of the former president's assets, and not as part of the government's pool of vehicles?
I did not have access until now to ownership or title deeds of vehicles. Maybe the lead counsel or the commissioners could be able to answer that question.
But it would be fair to ask you that those vehicles were under investigation, at least, as part of your mandate.
Yes, that I know.
Those vehicles were under investigation.
Those vehicles were under investigation and they were visited and recorded by the commission.
Mr. Kurang, I'm aware that you were eventually relieved of your duties just about a year from your appointment. To be precise, I believe the 10th day of July 2018. Between 15th day of July 2017 and the 10th day of July 2018, did you engage in the selling of any vehicles?
Yes, there was the tractors. As indicated in my statement.
Aside from the tractors, did you engage in the selling of any other vehicles?
None at all.
And before we go to the tractors, did you get interests for the purchase of any vehicles aside from the tractors before you left?
What kind of interest, you mean?
Did the commission receive any requests from buyers of vehicles?
I know I said in my statement that the commission have received letters for expression of interest of people, for example, for the aeroplanes. What I understand with all vehicles is that eventually they will be disposed of, if they are to be disposed, by an auction, not by invitations to buy.
Yes, the question is precisely what occurred. If it did not occur, feel free.
No, I don't remember any.
Thank you. So just to be clear, the Arab businessman you allude to, who was prepared to put $1 million in our coffers, did not appear.
This was, like I indicated, this was a statement from the lead counsel. I did not say I met or heard from the businessman.
Understood.
Yes.
Did the person show interest?
I did not say I heard from the person, I say I heard from the lead counsel.
Yes. So did any Arab person offering $1 million appear afterwards?
I have never spoken to anybody about sale of any luxury vehicle.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the sale of the tractors, as you had mentioned, and in your statement you rightly mentioned that the tractors were procured from a certain project, an Indian project, and there were about 500 tractors procured. Could you guide the committee on the knowledge you have as to the extent of the tractors? And if you could be specific as to how you know, what you know about the procurement of the tractors and how many tractors there were exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like I stated, the tractors actually was, from what I know, an agreement between the government of India and the Gambia government, whereby, as a result of testimonies before the commission, the testimonies that were made before the commission indicated that it was a total amount of $6 million, if I could remember. And this amount obviously was guaranteed by the government and to be paid later. I've also seen records of some government association, for example, the Social Security, making some payments. What I could remember is that there were about 500 tractors, from what I heard or what I could remember. They are divided into two different classes, the John Deere and the Mahindra tractors. And if I could remember, the tractors were brought, not assembled. They were assembled in the Gambia. There was a team that was working with the maintenance service department, the Kutu workshop from India, and then also people on the ground that assembled the tractors. I also remember that some of the tractors were sold to individuals by one of Jammeh affiliated companies, maybe Kanilai KGI. So,
was this before the establishment of the commission?
Yeah, this was before Jammeh left. Some of the tractors were sold to individuals or companies.
So
yeah.
Pardon me. Upon, did you want to say something? Did I cut you off?
No, it's okay. You can go ahead.
Upon assuming office, how many tractors did you find on the ground?
I can't remember the.
If you need your statement to aid any of your answers, please feel free to ask and we'll furnish you with it if you don't already have it.
My statement is right here, but I did not mention any number found on the ground in my statement. What I can say is that the vehicles control unit at the State House was in charge of identifying, locating, and then seizing the tractors and then parking them. Usually they were parked at different police stations around, around the country, because some of the tractors were seized around the country. The records were kept by the Vehicles Control Department, and these were supplied to the Commission through the Council.
Can you elaborate on that? What was supplied through, or when you say council, you mean?
The lead council's office, because the lead council was directly dealing with the Vehicles Control Department to get information. I think first to give them instruction to impound the tractors. After they are impounded, to take the records of the tractors and then submitting records of the tractors to the commission. Yes, I remember seeing records of tractors at the commission, but I cannot remember the amount exactly.
It is true that the commission eventually underwent a tour, so to speak, to identify the locations where tractors were parked.
Yes, the commission did go on several site visits, and most of the places where the tractors are have been seen by the commission, either the full commission or some members of the commission.
Do you recall the specific dates?
No. This site visits, no, I can't recall it offhand, but it was in the media. Every site visit of the commission is documented in the media.
If I suggest a date, would it be able to jog your memory?
Well, if you suggest it, maybe.
The 23rd of July, 2018. Sorry, of June, 2018.
23rd of June. That would be one of the 23rd of June. That was just before I left, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the visit, yeah. I'll be part of that visit to locate the tractors, yes.
Do you recall how many days it was?
The number of days? Well, the tractors that I have visited were only in the West Coast region and the KMC region. The tractors that were parked outside KMC and West Coast region, I think, obviously, before I could visit them, I left the commission.
So how many tractors in total did you visit or did you record in the KMC region?
The KMC region, the tractors that I could remember, there was Kotu Workshop, only Kotu Workshop in KMC, and then there was Banjumunding, then there was Brickhammer, and then there was Briam, what's it called again? Sumita, Sibanor, Kanilai, Kalaji. These are the places with police stations. Yeah. So, yeah, I remember visiting all those sites. But the exact number should be on the records or in the file.
Which records are you referring to? The commission's records or the
yes,
records?
The commission's records.
You do not recall how many you...
I will not be able to recall it offhand because, you know, we sold a total of 43 or so tractors, and it wasn't all the tractors that were sold because some the commission had decided to give them back to communities or some, yeah.
Can you put a number of the amount of tractors that were given back to communities? And please shed light on why they were given back to communities.
Yeah, when the tractors are impounded, obviously the tractors were, most of 90% of the tractors, I could say, maybe Jammeh had already allocated them, or the government of Jammeh had allocated them to either individuals or communities, or some people came and said that they have bought the tractors from KGI. They brought receipts, proof of purchase of what they bought it for, and when they bring it to the secretariat. When they bring it to the secretariat, I would make notes and send it to the council to advise the commission of whether there is sufficient evidence to release the tractor back to the rightful owner. That happened in a few cases, maybe less than 10 that I could remember, whose tractors were returned to because they paid for it to KGI. And then, as far as I know, in the West Coast, the tractors I visited, the ones to the community were not returned immediately, but yes, if the community's tractors, they were asked to make submission to the commission. That I could remember. The commissioners decided that we should tell the communities if they come, or the police or the vehicle controls units, when they communicate with the communities where they seize it from, and it was used as a community property, they should make a presentation to show proof that they have been using the tractor for community purposes and truly for community purposes. But the release of this to the communities did not happen while I was there. I did not witness it.
Let's focus on what you in fact witnessed or partook in. You partook in the sale of 43 tractors as per your account. And I had suggested that this occurred from the 23rd of June, 2018. I suggest from the record that it was a 3-day exercise, and the exercise completed on the 26th of June, 2018. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Good.
Where did you get such authority to conduct the viewing and the sales? Were you instructed by someone? And who is that person?
Yes, the commission issued an order to that effect for the tractors to be valued and put up for sale.
At this point, I would now refer to the interim order that we looked at yesterday with regards to the cattle. And perhaps I would ask you to read the last line of the order.
The last line says, all costs shall be defrayed from the proceeds of sale. Is that what you mean?
The interim order.
The interim order.
Secretariat.
Number 6? Or
Number 6.
number 6?
Yes.
The leave of the High Court shall be short in respect of this order if considered appropriate.
The leave of this order.
The leave of the High Court.
Sorry, the leave of the High Court.
Shall be sought in respect of this order if considered appropriate.
Okay. And who was to consider it appropriate?
I believe the signatory,
Who was the signatory?
the chairperson,
And who made the order?
the commission
Chairperson is a chairperson of?
representing the commission.
I will refer to you, Mr. Kurang, and leave this line of questioning for someone else. Perhaps we can revisit it with yourself on a much later date.
Sure.
However, back to the interim order you just referred to
Yes.
for the sale of tractors.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a copy of that interim order?
I don't have it with me here, but maybe if I search, I can find it. But it was just very similar to the livestock interim order, in the same manner.
And if in the same manner it would ordinarily have a provision similar to
I mean, I don't remember the exact wordings, but I just said they will have similarities.
Okay, but let's assume that the commission made an order. Once it made the order, it, again, just like that interim order, placed the responsibility in your capable hands. Isn't that so?
Yeah.
Who was responsible for valuing, attaching value to the tractors?
The tractor valuation was done by, if I could remember, one Mr. Njai, who was, if I remember well, he was a witness to the commission, and he was a witness in relation to the maintenance service department, which is commonly known as the Kotu workshop. And if my memory serves me, he was one time the manager or managing director of the Kotu workshop. And if I could remember, he was testifying in relation to the arrival and the assembling of the tractors. So he was the valuer.
When you say Mr. Njai, do you remember the first name?
I don't remember the first name.
Did Mr. Njai value the properties in his personal capacity or as the head of the MSA?
No, I think at the time of valuing the tractors or the vehicles, Mr. Njai was not the head of the maintenance service. I believe he was retired.
So just as a matter of fact and for the benefit of our records, Mr. Njai played a dual role in the mandate of the commission. Mr. Njai was a witness and Mr. Njai was also contracted.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the circumstances, as far as I can remember, would show.
Was there an engagement of other persons to ascertain competence as to who else could value these tractors? I guess what I'm asking is, what was the procurement process for appointing a valuer?
I don't remember any other person or anybody doing any due process on the competence of Mr. Njai. No.
And to the best of your memory, who suggested Mr. Njai be the valuer? Was it the commission, or did it come from yourself, or did it come from lead counsel?
I have never met Mr. Njai before that. By all reasonable assumptions, I would think it was from the lead counsel's office.
You say by all reasonable assumptions?
Yes, because if he was a witness, he's been invited by the lead counsel, been questioned by the investigators, they know his background, and possibly they know him before that, so they have first contact with him.
Thank you. I would like to take you back momentarily to the first meeting of the commission. You referred to a meeting where yourself and the commissioners sat. I would assume that in that meeting, such issues would be discussed, the issues of third-party appointments, contracting third parties. Was that the case?
Maybe if they are not discussed at that entry meeting, because they might not have been urgent at that moment since they were not. But along the way, yes, I believe there were discussions about contracting people. I remember there were discussions about Augustus Pump. There were discussions about the valuers, yes, the vehicle valuer and the other valuers. Yes, this naturally the commission would discuss them, and yes, I do remember discussions.
And as per your recollection, this occurred in dependency of the commission after the first meeting?
Yeah, I believe these things occurred during the commission, not necessarily in the first meeting.
Mr. Kurang, the committee is wondering, given you are the secretary to the commission, an individual with extensive experience in the accounting field, to tally that with the commission's mandate, I mean, it would have been reasonable to expect that at some point, valuation of assets would have ensued, especially as an accountant. I believe it's fair to say so.
Sure, yes.
Did you ever envision your role as an advisor to the commission?
Yeah, the chairperson had always told me that I'm more like, apart from being a secretary, I'm also an advisor to them. Why? Because from my interaction with a different circle of people, I might have access to information or ideas that they don't have access to. So he sees me and treats me as an advisor.
I believe, to my mind as well, it is reasonable to expect that you would be an advisor. And having said that, did you ever advise for the process of procurement, especially on this issue of valuers, to ensure that there is sanity, transparency in the appointment of valuers of assets? Did you ever put it on record? Is there a plan from the commission as to how the commission will go about contacting persons to value these properties?
Well, maybe I don't remember my advice being sought and or giving any written specific advice, but yes, I would have contributed if they were on the agenda in any meeting. I don't set the agendas as such.
To borrow from your words yesterday, actually, we would come to that. You did not advise, and nobody discussed the issue of procurement. Is that correct?
When you say procurement, can you be specific?
When it came to, perhaps procurement is the wrong word, when it came to appointment of contractors, of third parties, was that discussed?
Yeah, I mean, the commissioners are very opinionated people, and the three of them are also very business-minded. So whenever there is an issue of that, they extensively discuss. I had the chairperson telling you about Augustus Plum and how the negotiation transpired, when they said they let him go, although I was not aware of that, when they let him go with 10%, I might have a different opinion, but they do discuss intensively about these matters, and when I'm present, I participate. But in terms of valuation, I think the council had more leverage about who does this, because information is power, and what is to be valued is always the council that is aware more than any one of them about what is at stake. I wouldn't say the council brought the value for the vehicles, but I think the council, among all of us, would have been the only one that had worked with or known the valuer, for the vehicles.
Mr. Kurang, yesterday in your testimony and in our conversation, I insisted on the issue of terms of reference and whether, as secretary, you understood your terms of reference, and as secretary that you also understood the terms of reference of the other individuals that you had interface with, i.e. the commissioners and lead counsel. And to the mind of the committee, it is important that the roles are designated in such a way that there are no blurred lines, such as to alienate who is responsible for what. And having said that, from your understanding of your TOR and the understanding of lead counsel's duties, is it in lead counsel's duty or responsibility to appoint valuers?
Valuers would have to be, or whatever decisions will have to be signed off by the commissioners. Obviously, the lead counsel would have been available to advise them. And like I said, if you have more premium knowledge about the situation or the individual, you would have a leverage in convincing them to accept. I don't see anywhere where it's mentioned specifically that the secretariat is responsible for that process, but you could see in the order where it says the secretary to the commission shall, in consultation with the council assisting the commission, take charge of and supervise the process. So, I mean, and within that, it is the council that has more information about the process than the secretary.
Thank you. You see, yesterday in your testimony, you mentioned that prior to the establishment of the commission, your conversation with the former Attorney General, or the Attorney General at the time, Mr. Abubakar M. Tambadu, in his discretion and in his choice of picking you to be the first secretary, or to be the secretary, he had remarked that he needed somebody who was not a direct victim to the former regime. In your view, Mr. Njai being a valuer, could you say that the commission appointed a valuer who was a direct victim? Because in your testimony, Mr. Njai headed an institution that was the custodian of these tractors in that regime.
Yeah, but what do you mean by direct victim?
I mean, I'm stealing the words from you. Perhaps I can give them back to you to tell us exactly what it means.
No, I thought you would say that Mr. Njai had been in prison or terminated or victimized in another way.
So
I'm not sure whether that's what you mean by direct.
Not quite. In your testimony, you mentioned that we are all victims. Yeah. Anybody that interacted with the former regime, especially the former president, we're all victims. And perhaps victim doesn't need to be in the strict sense of inflicting pain and harm. But what I'm more interested in is the issue of conflict of interest, and whether somebody that was the custodian of the assets that were the subject of the commission could still be a proper person to value those very assets.
Yeah, that's a point. I mean, that's a point of concern. You know, when you said it, obviously, it's point of concern flashed through my mind. I mean, he's been there. He was the head of the institution. But that's one way, which is a very valid, logical way of analyzing it. Another way is maybe it is felt that he has specialized knowledge, you know, about the machines, and at that time, you know, that could be also another argument.
And this is perhaps where I can tap into your experience as an accountant. Valuation. When it comes to valuation, isn't it better or safer to explore independence?
Yes, there is more integrity to the valuation if there is no, like you said, no familiarity or no conflicts.
And I'm elated that you actually used the word integrity, since this was a commission set up under the whole scheme of the transitional justice process. And of course, I'm sure during your orientation, or any orientation you might have had with the government, it would have been communicated that transparency is an objective, that the people of the Gambia should know what and every step the Commission took, at least reasonably.
Yes, I completely agree with you that that's the case, yes.
Okay, let's leave this point for now. We could revisit it later. The tractors. You had mentioned several points. Can you please reiterate those points where you visited the tractors?
I did say that the tractors that I visited were in KMC was only Kutu workshop, and then in West Coast there was Banjulunding, there was Brikama, all the police stations along the Soma Basse, along the Brikama Basse Highway, Brikama Block, Sumita.
So they were in the custody of police stations, so
yes.
Different police stations.
Yes, they were parked in the police station because normally when we go there, the vehicle controls unit officers were also policemen, and they deposited, or they are the ones who parked it there, so they would normally go in the police station and do the necessary clearance and communication. So they were parked in the police station in the custody of the stations.
Back to Mr. Njai, and before we go to the yardstick of valuation, since you were present, can you guide the committee on what your naked eye representation of the value of the tractors were? Not quite the value, but what came to your mind when you first saw the tractors at these different points?
Yes, the unlike the how do I call it? Unlike the cattles in which I was present when the livestock department were valuing the cattles, I was present. In the case of the tractors, we took Mr. Njai there to show him the location. And my understanding was that he went back with his team or whatever, and then take their time and assess the vehicles independently. I wasn't present in that process. So they did that and submitted a report to the commission.
Were you privy to that report?
Yes, I've seen that report.
From your recollection of what was in that report, what was the yardstick used by Mr. Njai to value the tractor?
I don't remember the technical yardstick that he would say, but he was, I believe, conversant with the age of the tractors. He was conversant with the technical details of the tractors and the condition, since he had seen them at that point, the condition they were in. And I believe he used his technical engineering, whatever, to base on what he knows. I'm not sure if he's available to testify, but this is what I believe.
Can you take us through the values that Mr. Njai attached to these tractors?
Yes, I think...
Do you want me to direct you to...
Sure.
Look at AMK 8. That is your part of it. Documents.
Yes, I have the report with me.
Is that the report that Mr. Njai furnished the commission with?
No, I would say this is extracted from the report, because the report he submitted is more bulky. He will take the picture of each vehicle, take the chassis number, the details, the location of the vehicle where it was parked, and then he will put a value on it. So, or a reserve price on it. We only extracted the reserve price for those ones that we reported here. So this is just one component we pick from his report. This is not his report.
Okay. This is then the commission's extract of his report.
His report, yes.
Can you take us through, for the record, what is entailed in this extract?
In this extract, we have here about 43 to 44 items of tractors, and you know, they were parked in the Banjulunin police station, Brikama police, Sibanor police, Biam, Somita, Sukuta, Sibanor, Kanilai, and Kotu workshop. So here, the reserve price, the reserve prices is what came from the valuer's report, only the reserve price.
Okay, so this, in fact, is a report from yourself?
Yes, I prepared this report.
Okay.
So what I extracted from the valuer's report is the reserve prices mentioned here.
Okay, so before we proceed to look at this report, could you guide the committee on the concept of a reserve price?
What I understood was that when the government is usually trying to sell assets, vehicles or whatever, they would, they would have to say, right, if it is going to be an auction, you have to say, what is the reserve price, which is more or less like the minimum price that the buyer or the seller is prepared to receive. So the auctioneer, who is the contractor, the auctioneer, the contractor, is giving notice of the reserve price. He would normally ask, what's the reserve price, before starting the auction process. And when the reserve price is given, then the auction process would take place. So it's usually a statement of the minimum price that reasonably could be derived from selling an asset.
And of course, Mr. Kurang, before we also go back and look at this report, the sales you had mentioned were initiated by an order of the commission. And now, although the committee doesn't have the benefit of that order, not from any of your submissions anyway, it is clear that the order for the sale of cattle had a rationale to it.
Yes.
The number of cattle were decreasing. Do you remember what the rationale for the sale of the tractors was at the time?
I think the rationale possibly the same. Maybe the council and the chairperson could be the best to give the legal rationale, but I believe it's similar to the case of the cattle, because some people may argue that the vehicle is more durable and therefore not subject to the concept of perishability as a chattel. Other people may argue that once you use a vehicle, particularly a tractor, and there is sand over it, or even whatever vehicle it is, I mean, so long as it's standing, it loses value. So I would say, I didn't remember what is written in the application to pass this order, but that's my assumption.
Again, I keep insisting on the TOR and the mandate of the commission. Was the understanding, or your understanding of the commission's mandate, to investigate and report, or rather to make profit for the government?
To say that again?
Was your understanding
Yeah.
of the commission's mandate
Yeah.
to investigate and report back, or to make profit for the government?
My understanding is to investigate and also to borrow from one of the members of the special committee to bring value for money. Value for money. Not necessarily, value for money is not necessarily always profit, but it's an acceptable objective even for a public good.
Okay, we will come back to that.
Yeah.
At this point, let's look at the report itself. You have confirmed that this is your report. We wish to look at the details of the report. Please be specific as to the dates and to the locations, to the prices, the reserve price and the sales price, and focus on the profit or loss as well, and who it was sold to. You have the floor.
So you want me to lead you through?
Precisely.
Yes. The sales, the 3-day sales, whatever, started in Banjulunding police station. The first day. And I can see here on the Banjulunding police station.
You need not go through it item by item. Just give us a rundown.
It's an auction, and what is required for an auction. Yesterday, I spent a lot of time saying that the best way you can get value for money from a sales process or an auction process, right? That's a public process, is to make sure that the system is transparent and due process is done. So there were announcements, radios, televisions to tell people, right, or newspapers, radios, newspapers, to tell people about the auction. And those who are interested in the venue, that this date, it was in Banjulungu on the 23rd of June, and people gathered at the police station. There was an auctioneer who is on a contract for services rather than of services, in reference to our yesterday discussion with the honorable member. He was the auctioneer and he was leading the process. You know, when people gather at the time is given on the newspaper or the radio, and when that time reach, the auction starts, and once the bell is rung, the interested buyers started bidding. So that there were about 5 tractors that were sold in Banjulungu. Not everything there was sold, because I was told at that moment that some of the tractors were identified as community tractors, not individuals. So that's 5 tractors, or so, yeah, I think it's 5 there on Banjulungu. And the same day, I think we proceeded to Brikama from Banjulungu, where there were 4 tractors. The same process happened there.
Is it the same day?
Sorry, this was on the 24th, yeah, the following day. On the 24th is when we did Brikama, Biam, Sibanor, and Somita. And then there was the 25th, which happened in Kanilai, I think. And then there was 26th, which happened at the Kotu workshop.
Okay.
All of them followed similar procedure: a public notice, time appointment, auctioneer present, announce the reserve price, bidding starts until the highest bidder which is thought to be the highest bidder. The bell is rung a couple of times to see if there will be a counter bid, and then the highest bidder, right, takes the item.
So as you were speaking, it's clear that the sales were conducted through auction.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Kurang, I will use my powers that I ordinarily get from the Special Select Committee to get free lessons from Jollof tutors. I know you had explained the reserve price and the process of auctioning yesterday, but before we go into the specifics, I would like you to lay it down again. Talk about the reserve price and talk about the rationale of the reserve price. Why is there a reserve price? And talk about what ensues normally in an auction once there is a reserve price. Those specifics.
Yeah, like I said, a reserve price is a guide for the sales process. So a reserve price usually decided by the valuer or set by the valuer to say that is the minimum that vehicle could be sold for. All right, assuming normal circumstances. And then, you know, the auctioneer, I mean, is an international process. I think the whole rationale behind an auction is fairness. Fairness and free flow of information, which I said is necessary to get best value from a sale. The auctioneer is all different from the valuer. The auctioneer would be given the reserve price. He comes with a bell, and when he rings the bell, buyers or interested buyers who have been publicly informed through the media and present would start making bids. Normally we will tell these people, if you are considered to be the winner of the auction, you must pay instantly. The rules will be explained. The auctioneer will explain the rules to the interested buyers before the auctioning process starts. That if you are the last person to bid and your bid is considered to be the highest and a bell is rung and accepted, it means that you are legally obliged to pay the amount you bidded. So this is what we call the auction process, and this is the process we apply throughout. I think my role at that moment, one of my roles there would be the oversight, to see that the auctioneer does his job and does it in the best interest of the taxpayer.
So, just to be clear, you were not the auctioneer at the time?
No.
And you just mentioned that your role was to supervise.
One of my roles was to supervise.
What other roles did you play?
Yeah, I'm the person in charge of I'm the person who has been mandated by the commission to lead the process. So basically, if a government is selling a vehicle, the government is the owner of the vehicle, and the government have to make sure that whoever is it, the valuer or the auctioneer that is doing that process, does it according to the basic rules of auctioneering. So my job, I was representing the commission, which is representing the taxpayer, and my job there is also to represent the principle of the process.
So I would like you to describe it as animated as possible, so that the committee can have a visual representation of what occurred. Now, the committee's idea of an auction is a gentleman, usually. I don't think I've ever seen a lady auctioneer. But usually a gentleman or a lady with a hammer and gravel, if I could call it, screaming prices, and I believe those prices would be the reserve price. And the reserve price would then invite for several other prices from the gallery and then it would go up and go up and go up. Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, I mean, the auctioneer, that's his business. So, like I said, instead of the gavel, there is the bell, which is more noisy because it's an outdoor activity rather than indoor sales. You could use a gavel for indoor, but this was a bell, like a school bell. You could hear it from, almost a mile away. So he will ring, and when he ring, he will say that this item, he will look at the reserve price, right, as a reserve price of 8,000. We are inviting bidders, right? You can start bidding, and then the bell will ring. Cling. Then he will keep ringing. If you say, okay, he starts at 8,000, that's the reserve price. Then you will say, one of the buyers, interested buyer, will say 9,000, I pay. Then he will ring again and say 9,000. Any order bid? Then somebody will say 9,005. Then he will announce 9,005. Ring the bell again for people to hear that the bidding is on. And then 9,005, then somebody will say maybe 11,000. Another person will say 12,000. Then somebody who wants it more than the 12,000 and can afford it will say 15,000.
Okay, I believe that is enough.
That's how you reach 23,000.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So, in that ringing of the bell and screaming prices, where were you?
Standing and watching. Patiently.
And what was your role?
My role is to make sure that the auctioneer does what he promised and what he is contracted to do. That is to conduct the process on time, as per the public announcement, to conduct it in the open, to make sure everybody is there and all the buyers are there, and to make sure that he gives time to the buyers to keep increasing the price. So I watch and I keep hoping that the price would go up and up. And when he reaches the final bell, I make sure, obviously, I watch him to make sure that before he rings the final bell, that there is nobody else in the crowd who wants to pay more than that. So, he would sometimes ask me, can I drop the bell? Meaning, can I do the final bell? And then I can tell him, wait for a while. We need more money. Right? Then he would keep ringing. And if he rang for a few times, and still he may ask me, right, can I close it? Usually I tell him close, and he closes.
We will blame the auctioneer for asking an accountant if he could close it early. You had mentioned that upon finality of between the auctioneer and the bids, upon the finality of bids, the successful bidders are required to make immediate payment. Isn't that so?
Yes.
How were those payments effected?
Yes, we generally requested, because of, we didn't want to have any complication. We requested for cash there, because somebody can tell you, we heard about stories in auctioneer before this. Somebody can tell you, I will pay tomorrow, and you may deny somebody with the cash, and when he goes tomorrow, he doesn't turn up. Then you have to go through a legal process in order to make him to buy, which may be costly. So another person can give you a check, and it may bounce. So we insisted on cash payment to remove all that risk. But in a few cases, there were some companies that bought, and maybe some few cases we took checks, and none of the checks bounced.
You took checks because those companies ordinarily had goodwill.
Yeah, you have to be reasonable.
And who was responsible of collecting that cash?
Well, as you could see, I issued all the receipts. I took responsibility for every amount that was paid. Of course, I had a team with me that were collecting the money, and counting it, because I had to concentrate on the process. But I make sure that whoever is receipted, I sign it and confirm it.
I'm sure your security were nearby as well.
Yeah, because I knew what can happen, and you saw what happened when I left.
I cannot confirm that.
Okay.
So let's zero in on the auctioneer. Who was the auctioneer?
The auctioneer was one Mr. Kurang Ablai. The surname, is it Jaite or is Kurang Ablai? So at that point, I realized, or I came to know that he was a famous auctioneer, you know, in the trade. So that was the first time I met him.
Could I suggest a name?
Yes.
Mr. Jammeh? Could that be it? His last name?
Kurang Ablai Jammeh.
Could that be it?
Yeah, that could be it. That could be it.
And how was
I heard he's passed away.
Yes.
Yeah.
How was Mr. Jammeh contracted? How was he sourced?
Mr. Jammeh was given a contract for services, and you know, he the price. I remember there was some push and pull about how much he should be paid, and I think the commission finally agreed, if I could remember, to pay him $500 per item. I think that's what I could remember. $500 for each vehicle sold. Something like that. Yeah.
So, do you know whether Mr. Jammeh was a licensed auctioneer? Was that confirmed by the commission?
As far as I could remember, I think he was. I don't. Yeah, the commissioners have discussed it. I believe they do. I remember them asking questions, and I think they were satisfied with him. But I don't remember physically whether I've seen the license or the certification of Mr. Jammeh.
Thank you. Now, to go back to AMK8, and before we look at it, just to rephrase what you had earlier mentioned, in the auction process, there is a base price you have referred to as the reserve price, and naturally, in that process, the price would go up and up and up until the accountant smiles. Can you read for us number 6 of AMK8? Each item, from the date to the profit.
Number 6, 24th of June, the buyer's name was O.C. Christ. It was a Mahindra. The valuer described it as scrap. Scrap there means it's not a functioning vehicle, maybe some parts of a tractor. And it was chassis number PNBX 176K7, acted Brikama Police. There was a reserve price of 2,500 for the scrap, and we sold it for 15,000. There is a difference of 12,000 above the reserve price, 12,500.
So the reserve price was 2,500.
Yes.
And the auctioneer kept going until a payment of 15,000, or rather the last bid of 15,000 was agreed upon.
Yes.
And this is for something that was termed or valued as scrap.
Yes.
Did you do a verification of all the persons that were bidding for these assets?
What would you mean by verification?
Perhaps if I could ask whether the auction process was open invitation. Anybody could walk in.
Yes, it was, like I said, before the auction, there were public announcements in the newspaper and the radio, inviting anybody who is interested. First, you are invited to go and view before the auction day, so you could know, and they were already numbered by the valuer, so you could know which one you are interested in, and then you could maybe prepare your cash before that. So that was done with the announcement. And
so before we move on that first visit where you are showing them what is what, was there a log taken of whoever attended that first?
No, that first visit is open. If they could even go there by themselves without accompanied by me, they could go, and view it. So that was an open thing. You could go, and the police will allow you not to touch it, but to just look at it, as an interested buyer. So on the day of the auction, anybody...
Before we go to the day, the tractors you mentioned were located in police stations. Were they located besides the police station or inside or behind the compound of police stations? Can you describe that so that we get a clear picture of...
like this one that you are referring to, in the case of Banjul, you have to go inside the compound, right, behind the building of the station and inside the premises.
So you need to go through police.
Yeah, before. They are all, 90% of them are inside the police stations.
So which one fell in the 10%?
Maybe Somita, maybe they don't have a space, for example, in the compound, so they packed it in front of the police station.
Okay, so let's deal with the 90%. When individuals showed interest in viewing, did the commission ask the police station to take a log of whoever was coming in, to keep track of whoever was coming in and out?
No, I don't remember that, and I know that the police would, because it's in their custody, they would have to make sure nothing happens to it. But, I believe also that since they know it's a sales that is coming, they would have ordinarily let anybody who is interested to view and only view.
Okay, let's proceed to the day of the auction. Once bids were made and they were successful bids, were the identities of the successful bidders ascertained?
Yes, because when you win it, you would like your name to be mentioned on the documentation or the receipt we are giving you. Otherwise, you not be able to prove further down the line that you are actually the guy. So when they said, I wouldn't know the people who gathered there. It's a crowd, and there is no way to ascertain. But when we reach to the point where you are the successful bidder, we would ask you to give us your full name officially, that I will make sure of that myself, because I write the receipt. So I want to make sure that who are you that is buying this, you give me the name, and then you pay the money to the people holding the money, and then once you make the full payment, they tell me he has made the full payment, I give you the receipt of the amount you have paid in the name that you gave me, the person who paid the money gave me, or who won the bid.
So let's focus on the taking down of the name. You mentioned once there's a successful bid, let's imagine it was one Lamin Mdiba who had won the bid. He comes to you and says, this is my name. Is that the procedure? Just gives you the name. Does he present any documentation to verify that name?
Yeah, I remember maybe some people bringing their ID. Here is my identification, and then I will put the name on the ID.
And this was not a practice that was demanded by you, was it? It was optional for them to show their identity cards.
Yeah, but I under normal circumstances, trust that if you give me your money, you give me 200,000 and paid for an item, you would give me your correct name.
Was that the position? Was that your position and the position of the commission?
That was my position.
That it would be as easy as that?
As easy? What do you mean by as easy as that?
That because I am giving you such and such an amount, you are laying all your faith in me to give you my correct name.
No, I'm not laying all my faith on you. I mean, I am depending on the concept of reasonableness, that I believe everybody on my list is a bona fide individual or organization.
And when they were organizations, you would write the organization's name?
Yes, like civil aviation, they bought a tractor for how much? 535,000. I wrote the name of civil aviation, but they were represented by an officer. But because they brought a civil aviation check, I think it was a check, I accepted it, and I wrote the name of the institution.
Were there any private institutions, like companies?
Yes. There was, I can see here, there was Jinkong Real Housing Estate that bought 2 tractors, one for $502,000, and the other one is
Let's not go into the details. I just wanted to know whether any companies came. And when the companies came, were they required to show any proof that they were indeed companies? Or did you also assume that since they were expending money, they would give you a valid name?
Yes, exactly. I assume that since they are spending so much money, they will give me a valid name. There is Jar Oil Company that bought the tractor. And who else is this?
That's fine.
Yeah.
The point is you did not verify whether Jar Oil was even indeed company or it existed.
Yeah, I mean, I knew the owner, the proprietor himself was present. He gave me the check for 1.2 million. So
how did you know he was the proprietor?
Well, I was told. I mean, that was my first time meeting him, but I had no doubt that he was the proprietor of the company. Gambia is a small country.
So is it because Gambia is a small country that we rely on third-party information to...
No, we don't. Most of these businessmen, we see them on TV, we see them on newspapers, we hear about them. So it's a small country, meaning that...
Fine, Mr. Kurang.
You can't hide.
Let me ask, was there a policy around the auction from the commission?
All this process and guidelines I am giving you is accepted, is what the commissioners had spelled out in the order, that it must be an auction and it must be transparent. And obviously, if you tell me as a finance professional that this sales procedure must be transparent, then the systems I put in place must reflect that transparency.
Let's focus on that word, that concept of transparency. And I would like to ask, could members of the commission purchase any of these tractors?
Could they? If a member of the commission is interested and is prepared to join the same process as any other citizen, meaning as a member of the public, the same chances, come to the auction, play to the tune of the ringing bell, and eventually becomes the highest bidder in his personal capacity, I mean, legally, I would seek advice from you why that should not be.
It's funny, we were talking about TORs. My TOR is to advise the committee, so I'll reserve on that.
Okay.
However, I want to ask, could Alhaji Mamadi Kurang buy any of these tractors?
No, I will not buy the tractors.
But could you?
I think that would be a little bit strange if I am selling the tractor and I myself want to buy the tractor. I think there will be conflicts of interest, and I don't think reasonably you could assume that that would not be transparent, as I was describing transparency, because I would have had maybe inside knowledge. And the concept of inside knowledge, it means that I could have an advantage one way or the other, the ordinary buyer. So that definitely becomes non-transparent.
So borrowing that concept of inside knowledge, and of course, as a matter of fact, you are not selling these tractors as Alhaji Mamadi Kurang, but as the secretary to the commission.
Yes.
Borrowing that concept, the same could have been said for the chairperson, lead counsel, or any of the staff of the commission. So I pose the question again. Could any staff of the commission buy a tractor?
Yeah, I repeat, for the secretary, I would never recommend as me as the buyer or the commissioners or anybody who could reasonably have inside knowledge, to buy the tractor. However, legally, if they participate and it is proven that they are not using any inside information, and they participate as part of the maybe, but for me, ethically, I would not recommend it.
Fine. The reason I ask is because how sure were you that perhaps an Alhaji Mamadi Kurang was not a shareholder in Jah Oil if you did not see the identification documents of Jah Oil? Or how sure are you that Lamin M. Diba in fact bought a tractor for himself and perhaps he did not buy it for the president of the Gambia, Mr. Adam Barrow, if you did not see his documentation?
Okay, that depends who are you posing that question to the secretary or to the layman?
I am posing it to you.
Lead counsel, can I have your attention, please? If you have a reasonable point where you can break, the committee will want to stand down for 10 minutes.
If it's pressing, I would yield, but I am at a critical point here, and I would like to proceed for the next 30 minutes uninterrupted. But if the committee is really pressing, then we can break at this very point so that I can pick up from this very point.
We can go for 30 minutes, so we'll stand down for 10 minutes.
As you please.
Thank you.
a valid question, but that's maybe a question for somebody within the oversight process, but as a secretary and in charge at that moment, I don't remember us discussing of how to identify bias, but I knew that I have a responsibility while on site. And that responsibility, apart from making sure that a fair price is obtained, I had to make sure that it is paid for on the spot, and that the person who pays for it actually claims or is giving ownership by the form of a receipt to that tractor. And I believe also that your office, or by nature of your job, would have familiarized yourself with similar government auctions or procedures regulating government auctions in terms of identification of bias. But that was the only process that I took to make sure that the person who paid and bidded, won the bid or won the auction and paid for the money, is actually the person we record as the buyer.
Thank you, Mr. Kurang. So, if I am to understand your testimony, it is to mean that perhaps the fault came from the policy end of the commission, that is the top end of the commission, and that would be the commissioners in their directive.
What fault, sir?
So we are agreed that identification of buyers was not a concern.
I mean, if you look at the auction, the process of the auction, winning the bidding, paying for the money, and being receipted, is not the aim of the process of claiming ownership of the asset. I will reasonably assume that after you get the receipt, there is another process where you would have to go to the police and get ownership or transfer of ownership for that vehicle. And one of the first things you would have to present is the receipt or whatever document you have from the commission to prove that you bought the asset. So if the receipt that you have is the proof that you bought the asset, and whatever document the commission add to that is what you would present to the licensing authority, for example. And in the licensing authority, I mean, there would be procedures or processes to say that you own it. I understand fully the concern that is being raised here, that false buyers are there, and when you have buyers with false names, or people come and buy as proxies for other people, then that could be a threat to the integrity of the process. I appreciate that, and we know that's possible, and based on what we have seen, in other circumstances, when you have proxy buyers, then that's a danger. However, I believe also that the danger or the risk of a proxy buyer becomes more dangerous or becomes more risky if the process that leads to him owning the asset is not transparent and not done by due process. In this case, I believe that the process that leads to him claiming ownership was very transparent.
Are you confirming that the commission was involved in the transfer of ownership from from one end to the buyers, from whatever end to the buyers?
No, I'm rather confirming that the commission at one stage or another would need to be involved in order for the buyer of the assets to claim full legal ownership. They would have to show who they bought it from, and if they buy it from the commission, they may have to show proof from the commission that they bought that asset, which could be the receipt plus something else.
See, Mr. Kurang, you see, the use of the words could, may, and should, for me, are very uncertain. Is that account your account as for your experience, or are you testifying as to what is expected of the commission?
Yeah, up to the point in which I give you a receipt, there is nothing like could or may, because that actually happened. So I could only bring in could or may after the point of receipt, which I have not, or which we have not reached. But assuming that there are other processes after the receipting, there is a licensing department with the police and so on, I have not got to that process. So what I could do was to reasonably assume with if or could.
Fair enough. Back to the identity of the buyers. You see, to the committee's mind, it is important that the buyers are ascertained, not just to ensure that the process of auction was transparent and that the Gambian people are assured of transparency, but also to ensure that assets do not fall on the wrong hands.
Sure.
And of course, the committee was saddled with several lawyers and at least 2 experienced accountants from your testimony, yourself and one of the commissioners, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Yes. And if I may confess, I do have a bit of an accounting background, ACCA as well. And I would say, from the knowledge I have from ACCA and the law, I know that in such a process, a reasonable professional would have averted their mind to anti-money laundering laws and terrorism financing laws. And I'm sure it is noted that the items being sold are tractors and that a terrorist perhaps might have no use for a tractor. But indulge me here. It is about averting your mind to such possibilities. And that alone should have warranted a policy for the ascertainment of the identity of every single buyer. Don't you agree?
Yes, I think what you said sounds reasonable. But if you looked at the process also, there are processes within processes. There is the process of the auctioning, which is a standard procedure, with standard norms. So within that process of auctioning, precaution is taken to make sure that the genuine highest bidder gets it. Now, that is why I said, with regard to the second stage, which is after the genuine highest bidder gets a deal, the second stage about identification, I'm fully aware of the concern you raise. However, I can very reasonably say that everybody who appeared on my list of buyers was real. I saw them, met them at the point in which they made the highest bidder, and it was transparent. Their names are here. If you have any particular reservation about any of the buyers on my list, maybe you'll be more specific with your concern.
Well, we will definitely get to that, I promise you, Mr. Kurang. But my first reservation is to the lack of a policy around ascertaining identity. And I can appreciate what you had earlier stated, that this is the commencement of the process, and the process would conclude with the actual transfer, and perhaps along the line, the verification can be made. And perhaps I can appreciate that at the point of the auction, verification would be a bit premature. And I can agree with you on that.
But just to add in, I do vividly remember one of the police officers present at the scene, asking for ID cards before we write receipt. I vivid, not maybe in all cases, but I do. But like I said, if anybody has any reservation about anybody on our list, then we are ready. I'm ready to address it.
Thank you. You see, the reason we ask before we move on is, aside from the other two reasons I had informed you about, is how is the public to know that even the president of the Gambia did not send proxies to buy tractors for him? Or perhaps, let me be more insane and say, you see, the former president was a very, very lavish person, as perhaps the commission has established. And what if he also sent somebody to buy back every single one of his properties? There should be some form of audit to ascertain where reasonably, of course, we don't expect the commission to know where every single property is, but to reasonably know where properties would end up. Do you agree with me?
Well, partly, because, like you said, we should be avert our mind and be concerned with who the buyer is and the risk that the buyer could be somebody that may not necessarily be in the interest of the public or in the public interest. However, if you decide to go and choose a particular procedure, I do believe if that is a legal procedure, you have to be in tune with the legal requirements of that procedure. In other words, if you choose to do an auction, and you say an auction is a legal process, and you want to raise questions about the auctioning, then you would have to avert to whether the auction, that there is anything that is done that is not legally acceptable in an auction. That's one. Yeah, the other concern about the ex-president, I know the ex-president could be, hanging on one of the lawyers on that table. Nobody can discount it out. Or one of the MPs, or one of the journalists, or maybe one of the witnesses. Anything is possible. Because you cannot discount a state power of an ex-president. However, like I said, I will repeat what I said before. If anybody have any question about any particular buyer on my list, I'm ready to entertain that question.
Mr. Kurang, your wish is my command. I will direct you to number 6. O.C. Christ.
Yes.
Do you remember who O.C. Christ is?
Yes, I remember O.C. Christ.
Is this an individual or an organization?
I remember O.C. Christ because I have seen O.C. Christ maybe outside this, I've seen a shop in Brikamaba, and I know because that shop sells spare parts. And then when the day of the auction happened, when the man appeared, he's a Nigerian man, and we had a conversation that I discovered that he is the man behind the O.C. Christ spare parts shop that has a shop in Brikamaba. I believe possibly it is still there. And the man himself, whose name is Christ, I believe he's still there. So I can say yes, O.C. Christ is a real person with a real business.
So what does the O and the C stand for? Or is O.C. is it Christ or Christ?
Usually Nigerians make short names because some of the names tend to be traditionally very long. So they give you a short form. But I'm sure the O and the C and the Christ all stand for something longer.
So even the Christ is not long enough. It's a short form.
I believe even the word Christ there is a short form of a longer thing.
However,
Christopher maybe. Yes.
So do you at least know what the O and the C stand for?
O.C. Christ, yeah, I mean, I at this moment as I'm sitting down, I will not be able to tell you. But I've met the individual and I can confirm that even after that, as I am crisscrossing the country, I always pass his shop and I see the same individual that we sold the tractor to.
So, O.C. Christ, as you put it, I read it as Christ, but I will take yours because you perhaps have acquainted more.
Yeah, I would call it Christ before, but then when I talked to him, I realized that they pronounce it as Christ. So that's why I said the Christ there maybe stands for a longer name.
It brings me a lot of comfort to say Christ instead of Christ,
Okay.
to avoid the connotations.
Good.
However, O.C. Christ has appeared on severally on this list. Isn't that so?
Yeah, I see O.C. Christ here. 1, 2,
About 6 times.
3, 4, 5. Yes, he sells spare parts. So actually, I think he was very interested in acquiring. But you can see that he didn't go for high value items. He went for the like scrap. He went for 2 scraps here or so, or 3. Yeah, 4 of them, because he is a spare part dealer. So any vehicle that is considered to be defined as the valuer, as scrap or not functioning, maybe some parts of a tractor, he normally interested in those because I believe maybe he find a use for every single part of a tractor in his spare parts shop.
Thank you. With regards to O.C. Christ, I'm particularly interested in number 17. Can you break down number 17 for the record and for the committee carefully?
Number 17 was 24 June 2018. O.C. Christ is the buyer. It was a scrap Mahindra tractor at Somita Police. It was a reserve price of 30,000, and we sold it to 25,000. Yes, this was one of 2 occasions in which, out of 43, the item was sold for less than the reserve price.
So, tracking back to our very prestigious lecture from Jollof Tutors.
Not from Jollof Tutors, from Mamadi.
Fair enough. From your humble self,
Okay.
taking us through the concept of a reserve price, and the committee's understanding now from that lecture is that the reserve price is the base price, and it is from that price that the auction commences. And ordinarily, at the end of the auction, the final bidding price should be a price that is greater than the reserve price.
Yeah.
I would allow you latitude to explain the anomaly
Yeah.
with regards to number 17, because the reserve price
Yes.
was 3,000 and it was sold, sorry, 30,000.
30,000.
30,000.
Yeah.
My apologies. And it was sold for 25,000.
Yes.
A loss of 5,000.
Yes.
Please put us through.
Like it's described here, it's a scrap described by the valuer, and I remember it very well at Somita police station. These were parts of a tractor lying down. You understand? But because it came from a tractor and together they are considered as scrap, this was the last item at Somita police. And we had to go, and there was nobody interested in buying it. I took responsibility. As I said, there are two cases in which they were sold for less than the reserve price. This is one of them. I had to take responsibility. And the decision I had to make was, do I leave the scrap lying there after all the others are sold? A single scrap there in charge of the police, and what happens? Or there is a man there that is offering that he has 25,000 to pay for it. Accept the 25,000 and move to Kanilai or the next place. That was the decision I had to make. So, as I said, I took responsibility and sold it to him, with the advice and of the other my colleagues that were around, and let him have it at that price so we can clear that place and move to the next.
Thank you, Mr. Kurang.
Yes.
You see, I have two concerns
Yes.
with that narrative.
Okay.
The first concern is that by selling it for 25,000, you conducted your own valuation. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree. I did not do a valuation. I took a decision
You see that
on the valuation that was before me.
the valuation that was before you was 30,000.
Yes.
You decided to sell it for 25,000. Of course,
Yes.
there's other components that advise that decision.
Yes.
However, by doing that, you inadvertently valued the scrap Mahindra tractor.
Yeah, I concluded that the value that was there at that moment, like I said, this was 2 out of 43 circumstances. The market couldn't find somebody to buy it at that price at that moment.
And I acknowledge that it's only 2 instances out of 43, in fact 44, if I may add the plow.
Yeah.
And for that, I must say it's exceptional. And if I ever have an auction, I will not forget the name Alhaji Mamadi Kurang. However, in this instance,
Yeah.
would you agree with me that that conclusion was an inadvertent valuation of the property?
I mean, you are also an accountant, so exceptional valuation is, or exceptional decision in relation to this asset, it was what I took. Like I said, I took responsibility for it because that was what was reasonable at that time. I mean, you took 5,000 less with for one item remaining there. Even to bring back the whole team there again on another day, the fuel alone will cost you more than 5,000. So I have to make an economic decision, reasonable under the circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Kurang.
Yeah.
And just to clarify the record, I am a lawyer. I do have accounting background, but a lawyer.
Sure, I know. There's exception in law also, all over.
Definitely, but you would appreciate that I cannot be two professionals at once. However, that we can have over tea after the testimony.
Sure.
I appreciate your rationale, and I appreciate the initiative exemplified at that time. And it brings me to my second concern, which was, in this particular instance, you did show initiative, and I would want to ask, did you sought the approval of the commission before concluding on a price of 25 for Mr. O.C. Christ?
At this moment, no.
Thank you. You see, that's my other concern. Not that there was no approval, because, again, you are also an advisor to the commission.
Yeah.
But in this particular instance, you sort of were very comfortable advising. But in other instances, such as identity, you ought to have advised, being an accountant. I mean, the burden is not yours alone, but you have to acknowledge that you ought to have advised the commission as to mechanisms for transparency.
I mean, you have to look at the context in this case of identity of the buyers. Like I said, the vehicles are under the control of the police, technically. The vehicle control department at the State House control the vehicles. So, and they were part of this process that we are talking about. Knowing that final title of a vehicle is not obtained at the auction site, it has to be a process in which it becomes perfectly legal to become an owner at the police station or the traffic, whatever. And there are officers there. You know, I believe that it will come to a point in which the state, before it stamps on the approval or license or ownership of a vehicle, identity of the owner is established. And at that point, the owner must bring the receipt, which must tally with the identity that was being sought to register the vehicle in.
Thank you. So just to put a conclusion on the undervaluation, the other item was the item number 28. If you could just read it out so that we can move on this issue.
Yeah, item number 28 is 1 out of 44. 2 is the second one out of the 44, in which we sold less than the reserve price. It was similar. It's a scrap item, and it was sold to one Modul Lamin Sise. It's in Kanilai. I think so. Is it? Yeah, in Kanilai, where the reserve price was 20, and it was sold for 10,000.
I believe the same circumstances ensued.
Yeah, the same circumstances.
They were both scrap.
Yeah.
Again, I will put the assertion to you that in these two circumstances, you assume the role of two people. Mr. Njai, which was valuation, and Mr. Jammeh, who was the auctioneer. Would you agree?
No, I didn't assume the role of any of them. I was put in charge of the process. The auctioneer would have done all what he could do. So I didn't do that. He did all what he could do. and he couldn't dispose it at that price. The valuer had already done his valuation. Obviously, the time he did the valuation was not the very day that the item was sold. So, I mean, if you had called him on that day, would he have given the same value to the scrap? Well, that's open to debate. But they all still had their roles. And my role, was to make a decision, a final decision, as being the representative of the commission on site, to do what I felt was in the public interest at that moment in time. There were 3 days, you could see, and all these transactions happened in 3 days. And, there is a lot of pressure then, but I think knowing that overall, for these 3 days, more than $5 million is above the reserve price, I would assume that they were done in good faith.
Thank you, Mr. Kurang. I know I promised that would be the last, but just lastly on that issue, what was the commission's or commissioner's reaction when you reported the undervaluation, the undersales of these two items, specifically just these two items?
I mean, the commission did not ask me any question on these two valuations, either by written or...
Thank you.
I think they were more interested in the ones where I made huge profit.
Thank you. And we'll get to those right now. In fact, it seems like you're somewhat of a magician, because if we look at 26, can you read out number 26 for us?
Yeah, number 26 was on the 5th of June, 25th of June, 26th of June, sorry, 25th of June 2018.
Mm-hmm.
It was a sale of a tractor, Massey Ferguson tractor, to Jar Oil Company. It was Massey Ferguson 8280, that was in Kanilai. There was a reserve price of $75,000. And at the end of the auction process, we managed to sell it for $1,250,000. So it was $1,175,000 above the reserve price we sold it for.
Please walk us through how this was possible. Was it that Alhaji Mamadi Kurang became a magician that day, or Mr. Jammeh was ringing the bell rigorously?
Well, for you to get 1.2 million, you must be ringing the bell for a long time. The bell was going on for a long time. Well, like I said, this was a tractor, maybe it looks like a used tractor because it was parked in Kanilai in the bushes. And I felt, I don't know for whatever reason, some businessmen were very keen in getting this particular Massey Ferguson. Jar Oil, the owner of the company, was himself present, and he was bidding. There were other businessmen that were bidding. And I was never anticipating that the bidding will go up to that level. But so long as people are bidding, whenever the auctioneer looks at me, I say, keep ringing. So he kept ringing until $1 million, until 1.2 million when the last competitor dropped out. And then the one who won it, which is the Jar Oil, came with 1,250,000. At that point, nobody else, the bell rang for a couple of times, and nobody else came with something higher. So when the auctioneer asked me if he could ring the bell, I said yes. So he rang the bell on 1,250,000, and I asked for the money there and then got the money. Obviously, it looks that anybody can ask for. And the commissioners, when I came, they were equally, saying this is not possible. How could you sell a tractor for this much? And the auctioneer also told me at that moment that he couldn't remember in his experience when somebody sold a vehicle in a government auction up to that amount. Maybe you could remember.
I don't believe I've been to any government auction. I am not that privileged. But Mr. Kurang, with all seriousness, this is an impressive sale. One that will equally raise eyebrows, just like the under-sale equally raised eyebrows. Could you walk us through, being an accountant, a seasoned one at that, why this could be so? As you had said, even the commissioners were surprised.
Yes. I think maybe most of the questions you would be asking, they were also lawyers. And when I went back to the commission, out of the list of 44 items, this was the main discussion. I think the commissioners spent a day trying for me to justify, just like you are doing, how could a tractor be sold for 1.2 million? So maybe somebody could see it and think that there is something to this which is not true. So they asked me, what kind of tractor is it? I described it. The picture was there. The valuer had taken a picture of the Massey Ferguson. And they went and checked also online what is the cost of a Massey Ferguson at that moment. And I think the value that came on was, maybe not even far, a new one was not far from what we sold the old one for. That was a question. Then they wanted to verify also, because they had skepticism, the commissioners had doubts whether this was a real transaction or it was something not fishy about it. They asked the valuer, they called the valuer at that moment to justify, whether this 75,000 valuation was actually what he meant. And we were all there, the phone was on speaker, and the valuer stood by his valuation. I didn't remember him changing his value. Then the commissioner, the lead counsel, and the chairperson and the other commissioners wanted to cancel the transaction because they just didn't trust it. How could somebody sell a tractor for 1.2 million? Well, I told them, well, for me, I have been sent as an agent. I did my job to the best of my ability. If they want to cancel it, I have no power to stop them. But if I was the person that bought this deal and want to cancel it, I'll just take a legal process. I told them that the buyer has a right. And I think they called the buyer or something to try to talk to him. And he was, because I know that he painfully paid for this. So if somebody tells him that what you painfully paid for yesterday or day before yesterday, we are thinking about canceling it, he would have reasonably said, well, I will take legal action to defend my right to the auction. Because when he bought it, I made sure he paid. He said he didn't have cash. I told him to give me a check right there. So he wrote the check. So he felt that he's legally entitled to it. And later, we spent a whole day arguing. I was really a bit, this led to so many things because I was a bit pissed off with the commissioners, and eventually they realized that they could not cancel the transaction. I had the lead counsel telling the chairperson we had no legal basis to cancel the deal. I challenge them. If you think you have a legal basis to cancel the deal, go ahead. So, but what I think happened was it was a transparent thing. The interesting thing was when I received the commissioner's report, I could remember there are 3 tractors like this Massey Ferguson. What I could remember, I think maybe there were 2 in Kanilai, 1 in Sifo, in the Jammeh farms in Sifo, we visited it, that looked exactly like this. But when I look at the sales report that the commission did after I left, I was anticipating that the other tractors that were behind, just like this one, will be sold for similar. But I didn't see that. I didn't see, because we all didn't see it in the report. Didn't see it in the list. Because that would have at least been something comparable. So I think for me, this was a proud moment for me and the team that we were able to make this deal. People know in a government auction there are a lot of games you can play. We didn't play any games, we just played a fair rule.
Thank you, Mr. Kurang. And it's interesting that you mentioned that this number 26, to be precise, caused a rift between yourself, the commissioners, and lead counsel. But before I go to the specifics of that rift, perhaps we can do so after the break, the lunch break. Could we go through the other assets that also have very high sale values from their reserve price? Now, I understand this is an auction, and you know, it is expected that the price of sale would be higher than the base price. But if we could look at some of these, such as number 10, please itemize that for us.
Yes.
If you perhaps could, we could go through them one by one. Number 10, let's look at number 10.
Number 10 was 24th June. 24th of June, one Bubakar Jaite bought a John Deere 5403 tractor with chassis number PY5403C001383 at Sibano Police Station. The reserve price was 80,000 and we sold it for 400,000. Yes. So, well, they want it, they saw the tractor, they want it, they view it, they're satisfied with it, we did a bidding, they bid it. I think usually when you have a high price like this, it happens that a few people are interested in the item and they don't want to leave it for each other, and you know, we have no time to let them negotiate. We just want to give it to the highest bidder at that moment. So other people make attempts maybe to get it, because the tractors may be in, even though they all came the same year, they may be in different conditions depending on who was handling it. I mean, that's reasonable. So maybe they are satisfied with the condition in which it was, they competed over it, and the man who won it paid 400,000 as the highest bidder. That was number 10.
Let's look at number 11. From there, number 16.
Number 11, 24th June, a John Deere tractor bought by Sasita Agriculture and Land Development. This was some kind of organization. At Sibano Police. Yes. At Sibano Police, I remember there were quite a number of tractors there, but he paid 451,000 as the highest bidder. The reserve price was 75,000. Yes, again, this was, you know, very well attended, and there were a lot of competitors for this particular tractor also in the same Sibano, and Sasita emerged as the highest bidder. Normally, it happens that maybe because in the same police station, somebody lose both of them, the 400,000 and the 451. So maybe the guy lost in this one, you know, because he couldn't have 451, but then he won in the other one where there is 400,000. You know, nobody wants to go home empty-handed if they have the money with them.
The same happened in number 16, from a gap of 12,000 to 115,000. Yes. Number 32.
Number
as
32, Babukar Kasama.
On Dr. Babukar Kasama, indeed.
Yes, Babukar Kasama and Adam Sala and Hadim Gai, these were all Kotu workshop. The tractors were in good condition. As you can see, the reserve price is 450, which at that time was very close to the price of a new one. In the workshop, they were, you know, they were in good shape, so they paid good price. They, I think Adam Asala was the owner of the clinic. Is it Lamtoro? Yes, I remember him. He came himself that he wanted a tractor for the hospital, for his private hospital. There was also Hadim Gai, also a businessman. I remember him personally. He came personally. So he paid 700,000 for one tractor, and he paid 650 for the second tractor. Adam Asala paid 665,000 for one tractor, and Babukar Gasama paid 620 for the other tractor, and Lamin Sane paid 590 also for the other tractor. Kotu workshop, you know, was very contentious, I think, when we came later, because that was the workshop where the secretary to the cabinet came and tried to stop the sale. Yeah.
So we will look at that incident after the break. However, let's look at the item number 44 as well.
Item 44 is Babukar Jaite. It was a John Deere tractor. It was in Kanilai. Well, it's described here as scrap, but the value of value is at 25,000. After the bidding, we sold it for $150,000. It was a John Deere tractor.
Okay. Going back to item number 26. That is the item that sold to Jah Oil Company. You mentioned that in Kotu it was contentious, but I guess you meant it because of the interference or perceived interference.
Contentious maybe in two ways. First of all, there were a lot of interested buyers in Kotu, so the bidding was very competitive. I remember civil aviation was in Kotu also. Where is it? In number 38. The civil aviation was represented by one of their staff. So they bought the tractor for $535,000. Because it's an institution, they could not produce the money at that time. And there were other people who wanted to buy it. But obviously, this was a government institution, and I kind of like let them have the deal and then bring the check maybe 1 or 2 days later, because it's a government institution. So it wasn't paid cash at that point, but it was also in Kotu. But obviously they paid for it.
But they won the bid.
Yes, they won the bid, but when it comes to the payment, they didn't have the cash with them, or they didn't have the check with them. So I think we let him go back to the office.
Because of the goodwill?
Yeah, because of it's a government institution.
So back to Jah Oil Company and their payment of a whopping 1.2. Was it competitive?
Yes, it was very competitive.
Could you recall any other bidders that were interested in?
Yes, I remember there were several people there at the bidding process, but I remember two businessmen went that far. Maybe most people dropped by the time it reached 500,000. I mean, not many people could be willing to buy an asset for 1 million cash. So the last bidding from 1 million all the way up, was Jar Oil and another businessman.
Do you remember the businessman?
I think it's Mr. Jaite or so.
That's fine.
Yeah.
What about...
Jar Oil ended up winning it.
That's fine. That's fine. What about... Of course, a value was attached to it by Mr. Njai, but from your perception of the Mercy Ferguson,
Yeah.
was it in good condition from the naked eye?
This was almost 1.5 years after Jammeh left. So the vehicle was parked, like I said, it wasn't parked in a parking lot, it was parked in the bushes, in a grassy area. If you park a vehicle for 1.5 years, maybe 2 rains have gone on it and it hasn't moved and it's a tractor. I am not technical. I knew it's not a new one, obviously. But it was packed, it's you could say it's a used one, maybe. But like I said, there were 3 of them, in total, I remember.
Okay. Let's look at the total amount that was recouped that day or within those 3 days.
Yeah.
Can you read it out?
You have here 10,572,000
From a total reserve price of?
from a total reserve price of 4,974,500. The sales receipt amounted to 10,572,000.
And the profit?
That means the gain or above the profit was 5,597,500 above the reserve price.
From the business point of view, this was a very successful business. Wouldn't you say so?
Yes, that's why I said the commission lost billions. If they had continued with this process, this whole thing would have been much more better for the taxpayer in terms of value.
Right. Before we go on to the break, I would like you to look at the exhibits that follow that are attached to that schedule.
Yes.
There are several receipts.
Yes.
Receipts for, say, tractors.
Yes.
Who issued these receipts?
Yeah, like I said, all these receipts are my signature.
And did the commission not have its own receipts? They seem to be generic receipts.
Yes, for this, these were generic receipts.
And did the commissioners take the receipts once you submitted them as part of your report?
Yes. This, I had the mandate, so I issued it, and that was not an issue.
As part of the receipts, you mentioned that your signature is on the receipts. What signature are you referring to? Is it in the portion that is allocated for managers' sign?
Yes.
And that is consistently your signature?
That's my signature, yes.
Did you require the successful bidders to sign anywhere?
Not on this. Not on this. My anticipation is that maybe during the transfer process, because the vehicle controls unit had that, they would have used this receipt as an evidence to complete the paper process as the first step of the paper and to a vehicle registration process.
Thank you, Mr. Kurang. Honorable Chair, I believe it's a convenient time for us to take our lunch break. After that, we could continue with the witness's testimony.
Thank you, Counsel. This is a convenient time for us to have a long break and come back at quarter past three. Meeting adjourned.